So first, you can just tell us where you were.
I was born in Brooklyn on April 11, 1929.
Okay.
I think it was the Methodist Hospital, I'm not sure.
Okay. And we forgot about Grandma. She was born at the Swedish hospital, she said?
Your mother was born at,
Yeah.
she was born in the Swedish Hospital.
In Brooklyn.
Your mother, in Brooklyn, 1932,
Okay.
September 24th.
And then where did you grow up in Brooklyn?
I grew up in Mill Basin, and I lived at 1522 East 66th Street. I went to public school 236. Graduated from there and went to Midwood High School. My brother Harry, I have one brother Harry, he went to Erasmus High School. Graduated from Erasmus.
And he went to the same elementary school.
He went to 236, then it wasn't Midwood. Midwood was the new high school. And while we were young, around 14, 15 years old, we had a baseball team in Mill Basin, and we won the Brooklyn Championship. We in the PAL. We won the borough of Brooklyn. We won the baseball championship.
Okay, and Harry played baseball too.
And my brother did not play on the team.
Oh, okay, he didn't.
No, he did not play on the team. But one fella played on the team. He went on into the major leagues, Bobby Lennon, and there was 5 of us on the team, 4 or 5 of us that hit over 300.
Mm-hmm.
I batted 377, I think it was, and he batted 500 and something. But we won, and we beat, for the championship, we beat the Cadets and down Marine Park, and they were, Frank Torrey was on their team, and Higgins, this fella Higgins, they were like the best players on their team. But we beat them in the playoff for the Brooklyn Championship, 3-2.
Okay, so you knew Frank Torres?
I didn't know him. I didn't even know who he was. He became a major leaguer too.
Right.
But at that time, he was just a kid. You know, he was
Right.
only a teenager like we were.
Right. And then.
Go ahead.
Okay, and then your parents. Where was
My
your
father
born?
was born in Red Hook, I think. I was told he was born on ship because his father was a ship's captain. He used to sail from Norway to the United States, and then when he settled here in the United States, he used to sail carrying coal and stuff from North Carolina, I think it was, South Carolina, up to New York.
Okay, so he sailed in these coastal sailing
Yeah, he sailed. He had a sailing ship.
Okay.
And but he used to sail across the Atlantic, and he had a Saxon and all that stuff, and I had lent it to PS 236
Mm-hmm.
to put in their display, and that was the end of that.
Right.
So
Okay.
you know,
Oh, so you think your father was born on
I
his
think
ship?
he was born in. I think he was born on ship, but they did live in Red Hook and King Street in Red Hook, down near Visitation Church.
Okay. So
He worked for the Bush Terminal Railroad. He was a traffic manager for them. My mother was a housewife,
right.
and
So where was your father's father born? Your
Norway.
grandfather. Your grandfather,
My
Nilsen.
grandfather was born in Norway, Oslo.
Okay.
Oslo, Norway. Tom has some pictures that I just gave him that he's supposed to return to me.
Right.
That has writing on the back of them in Norwegian. So he's going to have the people out at Volvo read it to him, then he's supposed to send them back to me.
Oh, okay.
I hope they don't disappear
Right.
like the
The
others.
sex.
And what else? Oh,
And-
and then my brother, the war came on. When I was growing up, I was a teenager. I didn't think there was anything else but war. That's all it was papers were just full of bombings and all about the war in Europe and in the South Pacific. My brother was in the South Pacific, with the 96th Division, and he was an infantryman in the PAR man.
Okay.
He was in the 4th wave that landed on Leyte. Either Leyte
Okay.
or Luzon. I think it was Leyte. I think it
Okay.
was when the one that MacArthur came walking on.
Okay.
He was in the 4th wave on that one, and then he he got hurt in the war. He spent 4 years in the Army. He enlisted, everybody was enlisted then because of the war.
Right.
He was only 18 years old when he enlisted. And then he got hurt, and then he was a driver for a general, McGee or McGaw or something like that. He drove for him, and he was at the trials in the Philippines, the war trials with the Japanese prisoners of war. The general was involved with that, and he was his driver. He was a sergeant,
Okay.
and he spent 4 years in the Army.
Okay.
Then he came home, and he came back out here, and he came home to Brooklyn, and then he went to school and got educated and on the GI Bill of Rights, and he ended up working for IBM.
Right.
And retiring from IBM, he lives in Cary, North Carolina now.
Right.
He did quite well when he worked with IBM.
Right.
I went to Midwood High School, played on the first football team that they ever had. I played fullback, which I wasn't that big, but that was a blocking. I was playing the blocking, a blocking back. And I asked the coach, Frank Merther, I said, and I was a running back, I wanted to, because I did good in practices and everything. So I eventually did become a running back and with Midwood High School. And what else? Yeah, we won a few games with the first year team.
Mm-hmm.
The first team we played was Jefferson High School. And it was 1947, 46, I'm not sure.
Okay.
And that was the first team Midwood played, and we beat them 7-6. It was in the mud. I played all but 1 minute. I didn't start the game.
Mm-hmm.
I got put in after about a minute, and I played the whole rest of the game, offense and defense.
Okay.
And Jefferson went on. That was the only game they lost that year, and they went on to win the city championship.
Okay.
But we had injuries and so forth.
Okay.
And
Okay. And what did you do after high school then?
in high school, I went and got a job to a couple of friends of mine that played on the football team, on the White Eagles that I played with in Mill Basin was another team. It was a very good team. It was better than high school.
So the White Eagles was separate from high school?
Yeah, White Eagles was like a semi-pro team. I was one of the youngest guys on it.
Okay.
They were a couple of fellas there, Billy Woods and Johnny Virgil. Johnny Virgil became a big boss with Pathmark, but he died a number of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And him and I worked together in Blues Market on Flatbush and Nostrand Avenue.
Okay.
And Billy Woods worked in the other store. All three of us played on the White Eagles.
Right.
And Johnny Virgil got Billy Woods and myself the job in Blues Market.
Mm-hmm.
And they might still be there, right at Nostrand and Flatbush, right as you come out of the subway.
Right.
And the butcher shop might still be there. And through that, I learned to became a butcher. I worked there during high school, except when I played on the football team.
Right.
The rest of the time I worked there. And then when I came out, I got a job with the A&P.
After high school?
After high school, I got a job with the A&P as an apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
You had to serve a 3-year apprenticeship. And then, you became a journeyman butcher.
Okay. So what year did you start working with the A&P?
I started working with the A&P in 1947. Right
Okay.
after I graduated high school.
Okay.
The coach of the football team wanted me to stay another year and play on the team and get a scholarship for college.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, they weren't, you couldn't go to high college or anything, too easy, on scholarships and so
Right.
forth. Not that I would have, went to a big school or anything, but he wanted me to stay, Frank Merther, and I wanted to go to work.
Right.
So I went and worked for Lou's Market. And then I went on and got the job at A&P and served the apprenticeship there. I was the youngest meat manager the A&P had. I was 20 years old. I was 2 weeks before I was 21, and I became a meat manager.
Okay.
And the Korean War started in 1950,
Right.
and I was going to enlist, but my brother got after me about don't enlist and all this stuff, so I waited. I eventually got drafted, and I got sent over to Korea in 1951,
Mm-hmm.
around August of 51, and I spent a little over 9 months in Korea. I was with the 2nd Infantry Division. I drove a truck for the 2nd Quartermaster Company and at times for the 38th Regiment and the 23rd. But I was a driver of a deuce and a half, 2.5 ton truck.
And how far north did you go into?
We went way past the 30, we were way up north. I came over right after the Chinese came across into Korea from the Chosin Reservoir.
Okay.
I wasn't there then. They were sending a lot of troops there because there was so many men that had gotten hurt or killed and so forth. So they were, replacing them.
Mm-hmm.
But we were way past the 38 parallel.
So you were there in the phase when you pushed the Chinese back?
We were there, yeah. We were there. I was there when they stopped the Chinese.
Okay.
The Chinese were stopped,
Mm-hmm.
and then it became like a stalemate.
Okay. So you didn't go near the Chinese border then?
No, but we didn't know because we didn't go near the Chinese border because we were maybe, I don't know how many miles past the 38 parallel.
Okay.
We were up north past the 38 parallel.
Right.
And with Heartbreak, I drove on Heartbreak Ridge and Bloody Ridge.
Okay.
I used to drive ammunition and troops,
Right.
basically.
Okay.
And one time when I was over there, we got strafed. Column of trucks got strafed, and I jumped out of the truck. Everybody was jumping out of the trucks, and I jumped out and I went to get in back of a tank that was hidden, trying to shoot the plane down, and he was hidden there. But when I went back to get him under the tank, it looked like the whole army was under the tank, so you couldn't get under there too well. And then another time we got attacked. Our company got attacked in the middle of the night by airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
And then one time I was carrying a whole load of shells, 105 shells, and we were really going fast. The terrain was very bad over there, the roads. And the road gave away, and the truck turned over a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I got hurt, and I hurt my hand and stuff, and the shells were thrown all over the place,
Okay.
But none of them, the shells don't have detonators in them.
Right.
The lead truck carries the detonators, and but the truck that I was in went on fire, but it was only from the gasoline from the motor, so it went out, and
Okay.
it was all right.
Oh, so your truck was destroyed then? Or?
My truck was destroyed, yeah. Then when that happened, on Heartbreak Ridge we had 99 trucks, and after that we had 30. I was one of them. I had the truck until this accident happened with me.
Right.
We had men in the convoys going, and one truck would go off the mountain and 3 or 4 of them would follow him.
Right.
Because, we had no lights
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, so that didn't happen to me, thank God. But
Okay.
then when that happened, I didn't have a truck, so they sent me down to Seoul. Then in Seoul, they gave me a Jeep. And my job in Seoul, until they got a new truck up there, was to lead the convoys across the bridge. Because Bedtime Charlie used to come out and throw little bombs at the bridge and at the convoys. And so you had no lights, so when you were in a Jeep, I would meet the convoys at one end of the bridge, and then they'd follow me across, because I could be close to the road, I could see, you know, where we were on the road.
Right.
So I did that until I got a new truck.
Okay.
And the last month I was in Korea, we were in reserve, and Captain Moran, he pitched. We had a softball game. He thought he was a great pitcher. He come from Bay Ridge. And they made a field, and they put all the trucks around the field. And that day was Tuesday, and that's when the priest used to come and say mass. So first went over there, and you know, not too many people were going to mass. But then after we got attacked, you couldn't get in the tent.
Right.
When you couldn't get in there wasn't always a tent, you know, wherever the priest said mass. And so I came back to the game, and he was pitching the officers against the enlisted men, and I hit a home run off of him. So he called me in the tent afterwards, and he was all mad. He thought he was a great pitcher, but he was all right. But I played in the bar league in Brooklyn, and there were some really good pitchers there.
Right.
So he said to me, you can either be a sergeant or you can go to Busan. So Busan was over 300 miles. So I said, then which way is Busan? He said, it's that way. I said, that's the way I want to go. So I went, the last month I was in Korea, I spent in Busan. I was a liaison man in Busan, supposedly to bring equipment and ammunition to airplanes so they could drop the stuff to the troops that were behind the, you know, were behind the enemy lines or whatever.
Right.
But I got 4 points while I was down there. The last month, you needed 36 points to rotate home from Korea.
Right.
So then I came home from Korea. I went back to work with the AP.
Right. So let me back up for a second here then. Going back to your parents and grandparents.
Right.
So did you know your grandfather from Norway?
No. He died when I was only about 4 years old.
Okay.
3 or 4 years old.
And where was your grandmother on your father's side from?
My father's side, my grandmother was in Red Hook.
Okay.
And she lived a number of years. She was a very wonderful person.
And where was she born?
She was Irish, Scotch and Irish.
So was she born in this country?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure where she was born, but
okay.
They met in this country, and when I guess he was coming back and forth, somehow they met.
Okay.
I don't know how. And they got married, and she brought the children all up as Catholics. She was a Catholic.
Okay.
And he wasn't.
Right.
He was a Mason,
now
32nd degree Mason.
Okay. Now your grandfather's name was Harbo?
Harbo Nilsen.
And your father's name was also
Harbo.
Harbo.
Yeah. Oh, we called him Harry.
Right.
But my grandfather, I don't know what they called him because I was too young.
Right.
You know, when he died.
Okay, so you grew up knowing your grandmother.
I grew up knowing my grandmother and going down to Red Hook every Saturday on the trolley car from Mill Basin was quite a ride. Had to go take the trolley car all the way to Red Hook when you had to change at Borough Hall. And every week I'd go, and every week I'd get sick from the trolley car. But it was quite a...
Did you stay for the whole weekend or just for the day?
No, we just went visiting for the day.
Just for the day, okay.
For the day.
And they had a house in Red Hook then?
Yeah, they had a house on 123 King Street. The house was like 100 years old, and finally it's not there today. It was demolished.
Okay.
When my grandfather bought that house, it was a 3-family house.
Okay. Now your father, did he have brothers and sisters?
My father had a brother Johnny, who had been a prize fighter, and he had been seriously injured in a car accident, and he had a big scar on his head, and he also worked for the bank.
Okay.
And then he had, my father had some of my aunts. My Aunt Ronnie, my Aunt Jeanette, I'm trying to think of all their names now. My Aunt Helen.
Oh, so he had a lot of sisters.
He had, I think, 4 sisters and 1 brother.
Okay. So his sister Ronnie and Jeanette are the ones who lived in Red Hook?
Yeah, they
For
all lived
all
in
their
Red
life?
Hook. They all lived in Red Hook. Ronnie, Jeanette.
But we met Ronnie.
You met Ronnie, yeah. She died.
Okay, but she lived in Red Hook all her life then?
No, she moved eventually. Her son became a policeman, and he moved to Jersey. To Jersey.
Okay.
You know, I think, yeah, that's who it was. I mean, he had more. Helen, he had, you know, my Aunt Helen, my Aunt Jeanette, my Aunt Ronnie, and you know, trying to think of my other aunt.
Okay.
What?
Well, how about your mother? Where was she born?
My mother was born in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yeah, she grew up in Brooklyn. And I didn't know much about...
Now, what were her parents? Did you know her parents at all?
I knew her mother, my grandmother. The father died very young. They were from Ireland. And he had 7 children. And my mother, my Aunt Marg, and I think they were the only 2. Because of the way times were at that time, they had to go into an orphanage.
So your mother was in an orphanage?
My mother was in an orphanage. The one in Brooklyn, Our Lady of Angels.
Okay.
I'm not sure which one it was.
And what was her name?
My mother's name was Mary Carey.
Okay.
I have in the back room my her grandfather, or great-grandfather, was Shields on my mother's side. And he fought in the Civil War.
Okay.
But her family was here way before the Civil War.
Okay, so your mother's family was here for many generations.
Many generations, yeah.
Okay.
And
And they were of Irish
They were Irish, yes.
descent.
There were Shields and Carey, and I have the records in the back room of my great-grandfather who fought in the Civil War.
Okay. But
And his brother.
So you never knew your grandfather
On either side. No,
So
I
you-
knew both my grandmothers.
Okay. Did you see your grandmother?
I saw
Carey
them a
then?
lot too. Yeah, she died when I was fairly young.
Okay.
And she had my mother had
How
you know,
many-
she
How many
had
brothers
2
and sisters?
brothers, and Frank and Harry, and she had Aunt Marg, my Aunt Ann.
I remember Aunt Ann lived right next door.
Yeah, my Aunt Ann, my Aunt Marg, and my Uncle Harry, and my Uncle Frank,
Okay.
and also Loretta, my Aunt Loretta,
Okay.
who was very nice. They were very nice. The families on both sides were very nice. My aunts and uncles.
Okay. So
My
you-
one uncle on my father's side, Uncle Johnny, he was a little kind of rough
Mhm.
guy, you know. But they were all very nice, you know. Red Hook was quite a place to go down to.
Right. Okay. Okay, so on your mother's side, you really didn't know much about where your grandparents came from then?
I think my mother's side, they came from County Cork.
Okay.
I think my mother's side.
So were your grandparents on your mother's side born in Ireland?
My grandparents on my
Or I mean, you
mother's
said the
side,
one
they
was,
weren't. They were
one line went back to the Civil War.
way before the Civil War.
Okay.
One on my mother's side.
Okay.
You know, on my mother's side went way back before the Civil War.
So,
Because I have the papers in the back room.
okay, so the most recent one was your grandfather from Norway was born in
Norway.
Norway
The other people, the other
A lot of
relatives
the-
came
further back.
way back before the Civil War.
Okay.
And they were living in Connecticut at the time. And they took my great-grandfather, he belonged to the first Connecticut. Want to turn that off and I'll get the thing.
Okay, so this is Record of Service, Connecticut Men in the Army and Navy of the U.S. during the War of the Rebellion.
Right.
Okay. Okay, he's in. Oh, don't move it so fast. Otherwise, I'll lose. So he was in the 24th Regiment, CV Infantry. Okay, written by Lieutenant Augustus Conklin.
That's quite a story there.
So Henry Shields from Middletown, enlisted August 31st, 1862. Date of muster November 18th, 1862. And September 30th, 1863. He must have left. He was the grandfather of Mary Nilsen. Let's see. Okay, now it's on.
Okay.
So just going back to your parents, after your father retired from
Bush Terminal Railroad.
Bush Terminal.
Railroad, and my mother never worked.
Right.
And then they retired, and then when we moved out here from Brooklyn in 1959, short time later, my mother and father moved out to Riverhead,
Okay.
and which is like 25 miles from here.
Right.
And they lived in a mobile home in Riverhead in the park there, and they really liked it. And lived there for a number of years, and then my mother just got up from breakfast one morning, and she just keeled over and had a heart attack and died. And she was buried in St. John's Church. And a number of years later, my father got sick. He was like 85, and he got sick. He was in Central Suffolk Hospital, and then she had colon cancer, and he died. And they were both buried in St. John's Cemetery in Riverhead.
In Riverhead. Okay.
They're both buried there together.
Right.
In St. John's.
Okay. Now, do you know where your grandparents are
My
buried?
grandparents are buried in Brooklyn. I'm not positive what, St. John's, or I'm not positive what, where they're buried.
Okay, on either side then.
On either side, yeah.
Okay.
I know, I've been there, but I don't remember which cemetery it was. There's so many big cemeteries there in Brooklyn,
Right.
so
Right.
I wasn't sure which one it was.
Okay. Oh.
Okay.
Okay, and you don't know anyone back before that?
Well, the one I showed you about with my great-great-grandfather who was in the Civil War, he was buried in that paper that I have there. I think it says it in there. He was buried in Connecticut someplace.
Okay, Henry Shields.
Henry Shields, yeah.
Right, so he was from Middleton, Connecticut.
Yeah, Middleton, Connecticut, yeah.
Buried in Connecticut.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was buried in. He might not have been. I could look on the paper. He might have been buried in Brooklyn with the other relatives or something.
Okay. Okay. Well, we can check on
look at
that
it later.
later. Okay. Okay, and then jumping back ahead after the Korean War.
After the Korean, when I come back home after the Korean War.
So you just went back to the A&P.
Yeah, I was the meat
Took you
manager.
right back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they had to take you right back, and I could have stayed out of work for a year and then gone back. But they were after me to come right back. So I did, which in a way I'm sorry I did. But anyway, I met your mother on a blind date. One of the other butchers working there, he was going out or whatever the situation was, and then I met your mother. And
After the Korean War.
after the Korean War, I had I had known her. I had met her on a blind date before the Korean War.
Okay.
Before I went over to Korea. And when I came back home from Korea, that's what it was, I called her back up.
Okay.
She was living on McDonald Avenue, or Warford there. I forget what street it was, but she, and we were going together for a while. I don't know how long, 6 months or whatever it was. And then she got sick with TB. She was only in her 20s.
Right.
I was, I guess I was about 23, 24. And she got sick and was sent to, at that time, that was, that was a very bad disease. You couldn't tell anybody
Right.
because they all disappeared out of your life. So, like a lot of her friends did. And when she went to send up the Homer folks up in Oneonta, and I went up there to see her every week for a year and 2 weeks, and then we got engaged in the TB sanitarium.
Right.
And then when we got out, the day we were leaving, all the patients and everything, which we didn't know, had decorated my car with shoes on it like we were, you know, just married, but we weren't married yet, but they did all this stuff, which was nice. And then we got back home, and we came back and got married in Brooklyn,
Right.
in your mother's church there, the big cathedral, St. Rose of Lima,
Right.
which was very nice. And then we were married like a year, and then we had our first son, who was interviewing me now, Joseph, and he was born in Caledonian Hospital. And when he was born with the cord around your neck.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first saw you, you looked like an Indian. I couldn't believe how you. But in those days, you know, sometimes people didn't make it with those things.
Right.
And anyway, you did okay. And then we had our other, our next son, Michael, a year or so later. And he was in Brooklyn, he was born too. And then Francis was born. And then we moved out here to Port Jefferson Station because we needed more room for the family.
Right.
And at that time on the GI Bill, not the I guess the GI Bill, you didn't have to put any money down on the house. So everybody thought it was nuts moving out here because it was, you know, so much country. It really was country out here. And, but anyway, I commuted from here to Brooklyn for nearly 9 months before I got transferred out to Riverhead. And then we had our other children out here in St. Charles Hospital. You know,
On Mather.
Mather. I think we had some in St. Charles Hospital and some in Mather.
Okay.
Where we had you know, Kathy, and then we had Thomas, and then we had another a little girl, but she was stillborn. She was 9 months. She was born. You know, she wasn't born alive.
Right.
So she's buried over in Setauket in St. James Church, in the graveyard in St. James Church, where all the priests and nuns are buried. And in that graveyard, in between where the priests and nuns are, is where all the babies that's stillborn or young babies that died are buried in between the priests and the nuns.
Oh, okay.
And that's where the baby is, a girl baby. That's where she's buried.
Right.
And our friend Father Brown, who we met while we were out here, he went, you know, to find out about the baby, and he couldn't even find out. And years later, we found out that the doctor tried some new kind of procedure, and a lot of babies, people were suing him because the babies were dying, and we had that doctor.
Okay.
So I don't know what happened there, whether that was the cause or not. But we know that even that Father Brown couldn't find out anything. And I met him out here in Infant Jesus.
Right.
And he was in Korea, but he was a fighter pilot in Korea
Right.
when I was in the Army. And we became friends over the years, and he's in Nicaragua
Right.
now.
Okay. And where did you work after Riverhead then?
Well, I got transferred out here to Riverhead, and from Riverhead I got sent to Rocky Point, the store in Rocky Point. I worked in that store for 17 years.
So that was the longest.
That was the longest, and then I worked out here in the A&P in West Hampton and Lake Ronkonkoma, and a couple other stores for a day here and there. But and I went out to Matatuck, and I worked out there for 8 years, which was really very nice out there. It was the best store in my opinion,
Okay.
and the people were very nice.
What,
And
so what was the last store you worked
that
in?
was the store I worked in. I retired out of Matatuck.
Oh, from Matatuck. Okay.
I retired out of Matatuck, and I've been retired now 9 years. Yeah, 60 years, about 9 years, and I never worked a day since I retired. And it's great, you know. And you know, when we had our youngest son Richard, he was born after we lost a little girl.
Right.
And when he was born, he was you know, he was born in St. Charles, and he had problems when he was born. We had to leave him in the hospital. He was in the incubator. And I never forget when I was looking in at him, and he was all wired up in an incubator and everything. And I said to the nun, just the nun and I was looking in, and I looked down at him, and I said to the nun, I said, "You think he's going to live?" And she says to me, "What do you think of God?" I said, "No, you know." But anyway, he did live, and he's done well for himself. And he lives in Kentucky now.
Right.
And our oldest son who's interviewing me, lives in California. He's a scientist for Lawrence Livermore Lab. Michael lives in Brooklyn, and he's a treasurer and controller of Keyspan, which I have the shirt on.
Right.
But he originally is a mining engineer. Graduated from Columbia University, went to Colorado School of Mines. Joseph, our oldest boy, he graduated from Cornell and Caltech and works at Lawrence Livermore Lab. And Thomas had a few different jobs, and he works for Volvo. He's an engineer too.
Right.
And
So
Kathy's an engineer too.
Okay.
And Francis is a carpenter.
But he teaches at...
He teaches at
Yes.
Bosie's, and he has his own business, and he's quite a sailor. He has his own sailboat. He sails around Long Island. He's in the races every year. He ocean sails. And all his kids are quite good sailors.
Right.
So, and then Kathy's an engineer, and Richard works for Briss, is in the horse business, and he's done quite well. When he first started out, he had that's a whole story in itself. When he started with just a shoestring, and he built up a business in the thoroughbred industry over the years, and quite well.
Right.
And he's still going, still hanging in there.
Okay.
It's a tough business to make a living at, but he's doing all right with it.
Okay.
Did I leave anybody else?
Okay, here we have Grandma's painting she did with her art class. The first, I signed M.A. Nilsen. Her first painting done recently. And here's one done April of 2000. Okay. Grandma and Grandpa. And Denise. In the living room at 6 Winston Lane, Terryville, New York. And the C1 is done too.
No, I did it.
By M.A. Nielsen.
But it doesn't look like the others.
Our horse booked up in our horse racing partnership. The family started by Richard Nielsen, the son of Richard Francis Nielsen. And here's a picture of Mom's mother, Margaret McDonald, who became Margaret O'Sullivan when she was a teenager. Here's a charcoal drawing, I think, done by Mom, signed M.A. Nielsen. Okay, here's a picture of me, Joseph, Michael, and Francis Nielsen as young boys. Here's a picture of the 5 of us before Richie was born. Joseph, Michael, Francis, Kathleen, and Thomas as a baby. Nilsen. Done in the early 60s, I guess. And here's a picture of my grandmother and grandfather O'Sullivan when they were married and when they were older. They lived in Keene, New Hampshire for many years after they retired. Lived in Brooklyn most of their life. Except of Grandma and Grandpa O'Sullivan. They were married. And here when they were older. The baby pictures of my mother, Mary Ann Nielsen, back in the 1930s. Here's a picture of my mother, Mary Ann Nielsen, at her first communion. Here's a picture of my mother, myself, and
So you wouldn't forget him, huh?
my 3 brothers and sisters before Richie was born on 6 Winston Lane in Terryville. Back in the 1960s. And Tommy was probably 6 months old, so back in maybe 1963. Picture of my grandfather Nielsen on the left. Is that when he retired?
Yeah.
That's his retirement after, what, some 50 years with Bush Terminal?
I don't know if it was 50.
Or many years.
Yeah, 40 at least.
At least 40 with Bush Terminal, right?
Right.
Close-up of my grandfather Nielsen, Harbo Nielsen. Here's a picture of my father Richard Nielsen on the right, taken in Korea. Picture of Richard Nielsen again on the right as the Grand Knight. Here's a picture of Richard Nielsen's hole-in-one, June 11th, 2000.
At the Villaroma.
At the Villaroma Country Club in upstate New York. There's a picture of my parents, Richard and Mary Ann Nielsen. Taken recently. Here's a picture of my grandfather, Francis O'Sullivan, as a young man. And here's a picture of my mother's brother, also Francis O'Sullivan, the son of Francis O'Sullivan, my uncle. And here's another picture of my grandmother, Margaret O'Sullivan, with her son, oldest son, Francis O'Sullivan, my uncle. Oh, and here's a picture of my mother's grandparents on her mother's side, her grandparents McDonald, taken in Brooklyn on Fulton Street. And this is a picture of my grandmother, Margaret O'Sullivan, with her brothers and sister. And she is the girl in the front. Okay, I'm just taking some pictures of the family house at 6 Winston Lane in Terryville that my parents bought in 1959 and we grew up in. There's Grandpa's van. There's a picture of the front of the house, a Cape Cod. We grew up in the upstairs bedrooms. 4-bedroom house, 2 upstairs, 2 downstairs. Picture of the back of the house. Grandpa's satellite dish he added recently. The porch that he built himself. The house was all re-sided. With the big trees, the shed, the clothesline. I think they had 1/4 of an acre here. So no fence in the backyard, but just a low chain link fence. The picture of the living room. Robert and Christopher, Grandpa eating. The stairs going upstairs. It's the hallway. The one and only bathroom.
Taking a video of the
room Kathy grew up in, that's now Grandpa's office. Downstairs. And just down into the basement. They had a full unfinished basement. The room I grew up in, upstairs. To the left as we went upstairs. With the trundle bed. Same basic design. Oh, and the old bassinet, which my mother saved all these years. And the cutaway into the attic area behind the wall on the second floor.